Hello everyone, my name is Brenda Mion and my specific field of study is fine arts. I wanted to discuss the topic about integrating art in school since it is a topic that is very close to me and something that I can share my experience with. The magazine that I would like to be featured on, my article to be featured on, would be Imagine FX magazine. It is a print and digital art magazine from the UK and it has been around since 2006. This image is from their April 2019 issue, and I thought that this was a good image to use because although this is just the cover, there's lots of information already in it, such as ways to improve your art, being a better manga artist, finding your own style, video training, and most importantly, they have lots of advice columns inside, which is the reason why I wanted to be included in this magazine, because my article is very informative, but it is also something that students can relate to, even readers in general can relate to. When it comes to writing conventions and rhetorical conventions, what I chose to initiate was pathos, which is basically emotion and stories. When it comes to me writing something or me talking about something that's persuasive, I want to discuss something that readers can put their shoes into. So for example, I bring in scenarios that students have gone through so that the readers of the article can say, oh, if I were a student and I really enjoyed art and we didn't have these classes, I wouldn't really know what to do because I wouldn't have a teacher telling me, hey, you're doing this wrong, or hey, you're doing good, but you need to work on shading this, because there would be no teachers and there would even be no supplies for these students because some students can't even afford these supplies. Another thing I chose to initiate was contrast, and contrast worked because I have given perspective into what it is like to not have art classes, but to also have art classes and how it can affect students. Lastly, what I chose to initiate was writing in the second and surprisingly in the first person. With writing in the second person, it is more professional, especially for it being an informative text, but I did include first person because, like I said before, this is a topic that I hold very dear to my heart, and I wanted to express myself as well and talk about my own personal experiences. Now, what I chose to not initiate was stuff like slang. I wanted to keep the text informative, but not boring. I didn't want to use stuff or I didn't want to use catchphrases that people would understand only if they're on Twitter. I wanted to just make it seem more like I was a teacher talking to her students rather than a friend talking to another friend. When it comes to topic and research, my initial topic was to persuade readers to want art integrated into schools. So the first point is creativity. And what I talked about was that if art is integrated into schools, students are able to express their creativity and they're able to, if they're sad, they can paint it. If they're happy, they can paint it. Another thing was job opportunities based on programs that could be used in school. So what I mean by this is that there are programs such as Photoshop or Illustrator, which I've used briefly in school, and it's been very helpful because I've been able to make things for myself such as art, but if other people like friends need flyers for their parties, or if somebody needs a poster for their room, I'm able to make it and I can either make a profit off of it or just it could be also a good thing such as a gift. Lastly, I wanted to talk about stress. This is something that I have struggled with home life as well as school and homework growing up. I was very stressed, and the only thing that would make me feel less stressed was art. And I feel like if lots of schools integrated art, or those who didn't integrate art, it would help students who are stressing express themselves and have something to not worry about and to just have fun. Now when it comes to the research, it ties in with the annotated bibliography. So I included journals and magazines, and with the academic journals, I chose journals, that talked about things such as the authors using programs such as Photoshop or Blender and, telling the reader if it's good or not. Or there were journals such as students in different countries using Photoshop or illustrator to, make their own money and, work for companies and do it on their own time. And with a magazine like Imagine FX magazine, I thought it was very important for me to show that, that there's tutorials and that there's also advice columns as well. Now, the research question is, should art be integrated in schools? And my claim for my article was that schools should integrate art classes because, like I said before, it can help students express themselves at young ages. It can help with other jobs such as architecture or even side jobs such as creating logos. So even if you want to do, for example, architecture and you don't really like art, in art classes you learn how to do stuff like 2-point perspectives and drawing realistically, like drawing buildings and stuff, and it would be really helpful for somebody who wants to do something else other than art. When it comes to writing to the gap, I included information for those who do not know much about digital art programs and their advantages. So for example, I explained what Photoshop was or what Blender was, and I also explained how these applications work as well. I also included scenarios of what artists go through. So in the article, I quoted that an artist in Imagine FX magazine was expressing how he handles his stress and how he handles basically art blocks. And lastly, I talked about what students would do in classes if they did have art integrated in schools. I talked about my own personal experiences as well. Now, the summary of the paper's key points are obviously having a brief explanation of, the history of art, and obviously how art has gone from drawing on canvases to obviously now like having drawing tablets. And let's see. I also discussed the importance of digital media and how helpful learning programs are. Like I said before, this could help with just simple things such as making a poster for yourself or a gift for somebody, but to also, have a backup job, creating logos or stuff like that. I also talked about the importance of visual learning in a classroom rather than a video. And with this is where I talked about my experiences. In the images below, these are actually art pieces that I made in college. And I feel like the only reason why that they were this good, in my opinion, are because I had a teacher and I had other students critiquing me and helping me out if I was stuck. And I feel like you can only get so much from a video. You can't really get somebody telling you, hey, you should probably work on shading this a bit more, or you're making everything too white, or you're making everything too dark, and stuff like that. And obviously, lastly, a way for students to relieve their stress. Overall, I think that students should definitely have art integrated into their schools because it can really help them out. And I feel like besides obviously thinking about jobs and thinking about money, it is definitely a way for students to stay in touch with their feelings and their emotions.